The stars above the neutral zone glittered like broken diamonds in a dark sea. Somewhere between the Triangulum Verge and the quiet backwaters of the Sigor trade path, the small moon of Velterran spun slowly, carrying secrets on its cool winds. And Quicksilver just wanted some peace. The Duplex stood at the edge of a cliff, its architecture a blend of human design and alien efficiency. Half-polished stone, half-shimmering Forceglass. One side was his. The other belonged to someone he hadn't met yet. All he knew was that his new neighbor had been cleared by the Galactic Housing Authority for diplomatic silence. Perfect. Quicksilver, Pietro to the few friends he still had, unpacked his third and final duffel at super speed, then zipped back to the kitchen to make some coffee. He moved like a ghost caught in a lightning strike. Here 1 second, gone the next, all wind and motion. Finally, he muttered, stirring his mug. No missions, no Avengers, no multiversal collapses, just me and a terrible landlord connection. The Duplex flickered as if it had hurt him. The walls were thin. He noticed that on day 1. Through the divider, he could sometimes hear low hums, vibrations that didn't match any machine. Rhythmic, almost like breathing. He figured it was some weird species-specific HVAC system. Until the 4th night. That's when things got strange. At exactly 3/7 local time, the entire building trembled, not violently, just enough to make his bed creak and the windows hum. Quicksilver sat up fast, silver hair a messy halo. His senses were too sharp to mistake this for a quake. No tectonic activity, no threat alarms, just one room. Her room. He pressed his palm to the wall. Thump, thump, thump. A pulse. It felt alive. He narrowed his eyes. Then came the whisper, not in sound, but in thought. You smell like lightning. He jumped back, knocking over his mug. The psychic voice wasn't human. Smooth, lyrical, and oddly warm. The next morning, he opened his door to find something strange waiting on the shared porch. A stack of fruits that didn't grow on this moon, arranged in a spiral with one silver feather in the center. Was it a gift? A warning? A diplomatic hello? Quicksilver stared at it, then glanced at the door next to his. It remained closed, as always. No lights, no footsteps, no sound, except the breathing wall and the whisper in his sleep. He didn't scare easily, but Pietro Maximoff knew when something was off. Back inside, he pulled up the planetary registry and scrolled to Unit B. Occupant, Lelzera, Diplomatic Attaché. Cyrellan High Council. Special condition. Non-interference clause enforced. Species designation. Class 9 biological. Psychokinetic. Telepathic. Bioluminescent. He blinked. Great. A glowing telepath with an anti-social clause. Should have picked the Mars cabin. Outside, the second sun began to rise, painting the cliffside in golden fire. But the air didn't warm, it grew still, like the world was holding its breath. And from behind the wall, the pulse returned. Faster this time. The 6th night brought heat. Not the kind from the twin suns overhead. This was something stranger, like static in the air, like the kind of heat that crawled under your skin and made you itch with warning. Quicksilver sat on his balcony, legs propped on the railing, sipping cold water at half the speed of sound. He wasn't used to stillness. Every hour without movement felt like pressure building in his chest, but now that pressure was outside of him too. The building vibrated again. Not the walls this time, the air. The sky above Velterran had turned violet around the edges. Strange clouds looped in wide spirals overhead. The local weather network said nothing unusual was happening. Pietro didn't buy it. He heard it again. The hum. This time it carried emotion, raw and unfiltered. Not words, not thoughts, but a feeling. Hunger, urgency, confusion, need. He stood, the cold glass sweating in his hand. Then, from the corner of his eye, movement, On the roof next door, she stood, Lelzara, tall, poised, and utterly still, except for her glowing eyes and the flickering of bioluminescent strands running along her arms. Her skin shimmered like polished pearl in the moonlight. Her long hair floated slightly around her, as if gravity didn't quite know what to do with her. And she was staring straight at him. No words, no psychic whispers, just the hum, growing louder. Evening," Quicksilver said, half raising his hand in an awkward wave. She tilted her head, like a bird studying the shiny object. Then she spoke aloud, softly, but every syllable hit like it was loaded with strange gravity. "You changed. You're sent." Quicksilver blinked. "My. What?" "You ran yesterday. Fast. Through the Stormline Ridge. The wind carried your charge." Her eyes glowed brighter. "It touched me." Pietro stepped back. "Right. Look, I don't know how this works where you're from, but maybe a little less rooftop lurking and a little more normal neighbor stuff would be nice. Maybe knock on a door next time." Lelzara frowned as if she didn't understand. Doors are for those who fear the approach. He was officially out of his depth. She leaped, silently, smoothly, like liquid light, and landed on his side of the balcony without making a sound. Pietro's hand twitched, almost on instinct, ready to bolt. "Whoa. Hey, personal space." But she didn't move closer. Instead, she knelt and placed her hand against the floorboards. They responded, lit up, pulsing once with the same rhythm he'd felt in the wall. "I am mirroring the cycle," she said. "Your presence accelerates the onset." "Yeah, no offense. I don't think I want to be part of your cycle," Quicksilver muttered, backing into his apartment. But Lelzara didn't follow. She looked up at him with an expression that was half plea, half warning. "You must remain distant. It is safer." "For who?" Her eyes shimmered again. "For all of us." And with that, she vanished. Literally. One flicker, and she was gone, leaving behind a faint trail of biolight that faded into the night air. Quicksilver locked his door. Not that it would help. Inside, he paced fast, almost out of habit, heart pounding, thoughts racing. Something was happening to her, to him, to the space between them. And tomorrow didn't feel like it was going to wait. The next day, Quicksilver had no intention of leaving the apartment. At least, not unless it was to run far, far away. Something was off. Way off. His neighbor, Lelzara, had given him a glimpse of something dangerous. The kind of danger that doesn't follow the rules, doesn't make sense. He paced the small living room, hands shoved in his pockets. His mind raced faster than his body ever could. She had been unstable, not just mentally. Her bioluminescence was pulsing like a heartbeat, erratic, unpredictable. The hum in the air had grown louder too, almost like an invisible storm waiting to break. But it wasn't just that. There was something else in the way she spoke, in the way she looked at him. Like he was more than just a random neighbor, like he was something needed. A knock shattered his thoughts. Knock, knock, knock. Quicksilver's muscles tensed. He was already at the door before he realized it, his reflexes taking over. He threw it open, expecting to find a diplomat with a pile of legalese or an irritated landlord, but it was none of that. It was Lelzara. She stood in the hallway, her eyes glowing more brightly than before, casting strange shadows across her angular face. The tips of her fingers buzzed faintly with electric blue light. "You?" she started, her voice low and oddly solemn. "I do not understand why I am drawn to you." Quicksilver swallowed. He'd expected something strange. But this was deeper, more visceral than he'd anticipated. "I don't know how to help you," he said, his voice steady but cautious. "But I can't just." She cut him off, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "You must contain me." The word hit him like a punch. Contain. She was talking about herself in a way that suggested she wasn't in full control anymore. There was something primal, desperate in her gaze. You want me to tie you up?" Quicksilver asked, not fully able to mask the disbelief in his voice. She nodded, once slowly. "I am changing. The season has begun. My body responds to forces I cannot control." Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost as if she was ashamed. "I am not a pet to be tamed. But I am no longer me." Quicksilver's heart raced faster than it had ever gone in a fight. The idea of tying someone up didn't sit right with him. But this wasn't just anyone. This was Lelzera, the most powerful being in the building, a diplomat of an entire race. And she was on the edge of losing herself. If he didn't step in, there was no telling what would happen. He nodded, stepping back to allow her inside. She entered silently, and the air seemed to shift again. Her presence was overwhelming, almost suffocating. The apartment felt too small for her now, too tight. Lelzera looked at him with what could only be described as vulnerability. "I will resist, but the pressure is too much. I have never felt such a need." Quicksilver quickly scanned the apartment. He needed something strong, something that could keep her restrained but not hurt her. His gaze fell on a pile of metallic cables he'd used for various repairs when he first arrived. He grabbed them, testing their tensile strength in his hands. "This should hold you, at least for now," he muttered to himself, more than to her. "Do what you must." Lelzera's voice was flat, resigned. He approached cautiously, moving behind her, and in one swift motion, wrapped the cables around her wrists. They glowed faintly, matching the pulsating rhythm of her bioluminescence. She winced, not in pain, more like she was fighting against an internal war. Her breathing quickened. "Just stay still," Quicksilver said, as gently as he could. And for a moment, just a moment, she did. But the pressure in the air, her presence, was rising. Her body shook, and the floor beneath them trembled. Pietro stood back, his heart in his throat, unsure if he'd done enough. "Please, make it stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. His mind screamed. He wasn't just a speedster anymore. He was the only person who could get this right, and every decision from here on out would be critical. The air in the apartment was thick. It pressed against Quicksilver's chest, making it hard to breathe, as though every molecule in the room was charged with an unseen force. Lelzera's bioluminescence pulsed erratically, casting long, wavering shadows across the walls. Her eyes were fixed on the cables binding her wrists, the glowing light in them flickering with something far deeper than simple physical strain. It was something old, something that reached beyond what any of his experience could prepare him for. Quicksilver stepped back, eyes narrowed. He had done what she'd asked. He'd contained her, in a way. But there was something else, something she wasn't telling him. She was fighting a war within herself, and it was one that he wasn't sure he was ready to step into. "Lelzera," his voice was hesitant, but firm. "What's really going on? Why did you need this containment?" Her head jerked slightly, as if waking from a trance. She met his gaze, her eyes wide, almost pleading. "The mating rite," she said, her voice quiet but heavy with something Quicksilver couldn't place. "It begins with the cycle, but it's not just biological. It is political. A bond formed in this way. It's not just between two beings. It is an agreement between empires. My position, my power, it all hinges on this." He felt the weight of her words hit him like a physical force. His mind spun with the implications. This wasn't just some alien mating ritual. It was a political maneuver. If he wasn't careful, he could be walking into something much bigger than a neighborly misunderstanding. "So, if I don't help you with this," Quicksilver said slowly, his voice growing quieter, "you lose your status, your power, your people." Her eyes flickered again, brighter this time. "I would not lose my power in the way you think, Quicksilver. It is not just mine to give. It is the power of my species. If I fail, if the rite is not completed, the consequences will be far-reaching, for my people, and for the ones I have come to serve." Quicksilver's mind raced. He was a speedster, used to acting fast, thinking fast, reacting fast. But now his mind was starting to slow. The pieces weren't fitting together. What did this mean for him? For her? For both of them? Why me? He asked, his voice tinged with a mix of confusion and frustration. Why is this happening now? Why are you looking to me for something this huge? Her gaze softened, a flicker of something deep and painful behind her eyes. I did not choose this, Quicksilver. I have had no say in the matter for years. The right, it chooses. It finds the closest bond, the strongest connection. And now, she paused, her voice trembling. The right has chosen you. His stomach twisted, the truth sinking in like a stone. This wasn't a simple situation. This was something ancient, something bigger than either of them. And he was tangled in it now, whether he liked it or not. She was struggling to hold herself together. Her breathing was coming faster now, the vibrations in the air picking up again, like the beginnings of a storm. The room felt too small, too tight. The bond was growing stronger, pushing at the edges of everything Quicksilver knew. Lelzera, he said, stepping closer, but still keeping his distance. What do you want from me? Her answer was a whisper, a soft, haunted thing that made his heart skip a beat. Survive it. Help me survive it. The hum in the air grew louder, the pressure becoming unbearable. Quicksilver could feel the pull of it, like the universe itself was waiting for him to make a decision. The choice was his. He didn't know how much longer he could keep up this act of containment, but he didn't have a better option. The ritual had begun. And the clock was ticking. The apartment had never felt so small. Quicksilver couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in on him, tightening with each passing second. The air itself seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, an invisible pulse radiating from Lelzera. Every time she shifted, the light in her eyes flickered brighter, casting shadows that seemed to breathe in rhythm with her body. She was struggling. He could see it in the way she moved, jerky, tense, like every muscle was fighting against something deep within. The cables that bound her wrists glowed with a soft, pulsing light, stretching and flexing as though they, too, were under immense pressure. Quicksilver wasn't sure how much longer they'd hold. She wasn't just trying to hold back some primal urge. It felt like she was trying to contain everything, her species, her power, and now, her emotions. The weight of it all was suffocating. "What's happening to you?" he asked, his voice low, wary. Her eyes flicked to him, and for a moment, there was something almost human in them, a kind of desperation that sent a cold shiver down his spine. "I'm changing." Her voice was hoarse, strained. The right begins with the body, but it feeds on connection, a bond. It forces a union between two. That is the way it has always been. Quicksilver took a step back. "So you're telling me I'm part of this now?" The words tasted bitter in his mouth. He'd never signed up for any of this, never asked for any of it. But here he was, tangled in something far bigger than he'd expected. Lelzera's face twisted with frustration, her lips trembling as she struggled to explain. "It is not just a mating. It is a merging. A joining of power, of fate. If I fail, my people will see it as weakness. And if the right fails, there will be consequences beyond my control. I am not just me anymore. I am part of something else, something larger." Quicksilver rubbed his temples, feeling the pressure of the situation mounting. He wasn't sure what kind of alien politics he had just stepped into, but he didn't like the way it felt. The weight of it was too heavy, and the stakes were far too high. "Okay, so this isn't just about whatever's going on with you," he said, trying to ground himself in something solid. "This affects your entire species, doesn't it?" Lelzera nodded, her eyes flickering with something between fear and resignation. "Yes. If I fail this right, the balance will shift. My people will lose the power we've held for millennia. We will become nothing." Quicksilver's mind raced. He'd dealt with high stakes before, world-ending stakes, universe-ending stakes. But this was different. This was personal. And it was happening to someone who had just been his neighbor an hour ago. He took a deep breath, trying to focus through the rising chaos in the room. "Okay," he said, voice firming. "We figure this out. We deal with it together. I won't let you lose control." Lelzera's expression softened for the first time, the light in her eyes dimming slightly. "You do not understand. If you are too close, the right will claim you as well. It will take you too. And there is nothing you can do to stop it. It will merge us, whether we want it or not." The idea of being bound to this alien diplomat in such a primal way made his stomach turn. But Quicksilver knew one thing. He wasn't going to run. "I've faced worse odds before," he said, meeting her gaze. "I can handle it." The air between them crackled, thick with energy. For a brief moment, time seemed to stretch, each second hanging heavy with the weight of their unspoken understanding. But then the hum returned, the sound of an ancient, unavoidable force building up, wrapping around them both. He wasn't sure what was coming next, but one thing was certain. Whatever happened, he wasn't going to let Lelzera face it alone. The apartment felt like it was shaking again. But it wasn't the building that was trembling this time. It was the air itself, the very pulse of the room. Quicksilver could feel it all around him, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to reach into his bones. The pressure, the tension, it was building faster than he could think, faster than he could breathe. Lelzera's bioluminescent skin had flared again, the light inside her chest growing brighter, almost blinding. Her breathing was erratic now, ragged, as if she was struggling not to let something inside her break free. Quicksilver moved closer, cautious but determined. He couldn't let her fall apart. Not now. Not with everything at stake. But what the hell was he supposed to do? He was a speedster, fast, reflexive, unpredictable. But this wasn't something that could be outrun. It was something else, something that ran deeper than physical limits. "You're not alone in this," he said, his voice steady even though his mind was spinning. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out. Together." Her eyes flickered, glowing brighter, as if she was fighting to control the wild energy swirling inside her. "You cannot understand," she whispered, voice trembling. "The right. It binds more than just our bodies. It is an ancient power, a force of nature. And once it starts, it cannot be stopped." Quicksilver's chest tightened. He had faced alien threats, cosmic forces, and planet-wide disasters before, but this was different. This wasn't just some distant enemy. This was Lelzera, someone who had shown him nothing but vulnerability and power. And now she was losing both. "I get it," he said, his words firm, even though the uncertainty gnawed at him. "I might not understand it all, but I understand that you're not giving up, and neither am I." The room shuddered again, but this time it was more than just the atmosphere. The floor beneath them seemed to pulse, sending ripples through the walls, as though the entire building was reacting to the force building between them. Lelzera's eyes locked onto his. "The right," she began, her voice quivering with the weight of it. "It needs you, your presence, your connection." Quicksilver's heart skipped a beat. "Me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The room was so tense, it felt like everything, every word, every movement, was crucial. "But I don't know how to help you." "You are helping me," she said, her voice soft but insistent. "You don't need to understand it fully. You just need to hold on." Her words were like a thread pulling him deeper into something he couldn't fully grasp. But as she spoke, something else happened. The tension in the air shifted, differently this time. Not just the storm of her energy, but something else. It felt like it was choosing him, as though his very presence was part of the equation now. He didn't know what to make of it, but he couldn't walk away from this. Not from her. The hum in the air was growing louder now, more insistent, swirling around them like a vortex. It was as if the room itself was alive with the energy that was coursing through her body and through him. He could feel it now, faintly, beneath his skin, a connection he couldn't explain, one that was growing stronger with each second, each breath. "You're not alone in this," he repeated, more to himself than to her. Lelzera's body stiffened, her back arched as if the force inside her was about to tear her apart. She gasped for air, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Her voice cracked when she spoke again, a raw sound that seemed to come from deep within. "Please," she whispered, barely audible. "Help me. Help us." Quicksilver's mind raced. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do, but one thing was clear. He couldn't let her face this alone. He reached for her hands, gently pulling the cables that bound her apart. There was no time for hesitation now. Every second mattered. Her body shuddered as if a dam had broken. And for a moment, the room was filled with a blinding flash of light. Then, as quickly as it had come, the light dimmed and the hum quieted to a soft, steady rhythm. Quicksilver stepped back, eyes wide. Something had shifted, something had changed, but it was far from over. Lelzera collapsed onto the floor, breathing heavily, but there was a glimmer of something else in her eyes, a quiet hope, fragile but undeniable. I think it's working," she whispered, her voice weak. Quicksilver didn't know what would come next, but he knew one thing. He was in this now, for better or worse. The moment the light faded, Quicksilver felt it. The shift, it was subtle at first, just a flicker at the edge of his consciousness, but it grew. The weight that had pressed so heavily on the apartment seemed to lift, just a little. Lelzera lay on the floor, her chest rising and falling as if she had just run a marathon. Her once chaotic bioluminescence now pulsed more slowly, but it was still bright, still powerful. The glow in her eyes had dimmed to something softer, calmer. Quicksilver watched her, unsure of what to do next. The storm had calmed, but there was no guarantee it wouldn't return with a vengeance. He moved to kneel beside her, keeping a careful distance. The air between them was thick, charged with the memory of what had just happened. His mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of the situation. There was so much he didn't understand, but there was one thing he knew for sure. The connection between them wasn't just physical anymore. It had become something deeper, something unspoken but undeniable. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low, cautious. Lelzera's breathing was slower now, but her eyes, those brilliant, glowing eyes, flashed with something like determination. She sat up slowly, her movements still shaky, but stronger than before. "I think," she began, her voice hoarse but clearer, "I think we've stalled it. For now." The words hit Quicksilver like a punch. For now. He had thought they were done, that whatever power had been threatening to tear her apart had been quelled. But the look in her eyes told him otherwise. It wasn't over. Not yet. "What happens next?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lelzera turned her gaze to him, and for a brief moment, something softer, almost grateful, flickered in her eyes. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, but she steadied herself. "I cannot promise it will go away," she said. "The right is an ancient force. Once it has started, it does not stop easily. I have fought it for years, but I cannot do it alone. Not anymore." Quicksilver's stomach tightened. He had known this wasn't just a random series of events. It was something far more complex, something that would require more than just his usual speed to resolve. He took a breath, pushing his uncertainty aside. "Then let's finish it," he said, his voice stronger now, the weight of his resolve building. "Together." Lelzera nodded, but her face was clouded with doubt. "You do not understand, Quicksilver. It will not be so simple. The right will test us. It will tear at the very fabric of our being, forcing us to face what we are not ready to confront." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've faced worse, Lelzera, and I'm still standing." Her expression softened, just for a moment. Then, with a slow breath, she stood up, unsteady but determined. Her presence, once overwhelming in its power, was now more controlled, more contained. But Quicksilver could feel the undercurrent, the potential for chaos that still lurked beneath the surface. "It's not just you," she said, her voice now steady, resolute. "It's us, together. The right. It requires the union of more than just our bodies. It requires trust." Quicksilver's heart skipped a beat. The word hung in the air between them like a fragile thread. Trust. It was something he had never thought he would give to someone, especially not someone from a completely different world. But this was Lelzera, and he had made his choice. "You have it," he said, his words simple but true. A brief silence passed between them before Lelzera nodded. She held out her hand, glowing faintly with the soft blue energy that hummed within her. Quicksilver took it, his grip firm but gentle. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, a sudden flash of light filled the room, and the hum returned, stronger now, more insistent. The air around them pulsed, charged with the unseen force that had been threatening to overwhelm them. Quicksilver felt it, deep inside him, the connection between them growing stronger, surging like an electric current. His heart raced, but he held steady. He had made a promise to himself, to her. They were in this together. And together, they would face whatever came next. The apartment had transformed. The space felt alive now, vibrating with a power that was both foreign and all-encompassing. The air was thick with energy, charged with the force that had been swirling around them since the moment Lelzera's rite had begun. It wasn't just physical anymore. The room itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with their connection, as though the very walls could sense the decision they were about to make. Quicksilver stood tall, his pulse quickening, his thoughts running in chaotic patterns. He could feel it, the surge of energy coursing through him, tethered to Lelzera. The bond between them was undeniable now, a force he couldn't escape if he tried. Lelzera stood before him, her body glowing with that eerie, otherworldly light. But there was something different in her eyes now. The wildness had settled, replaced by something more determined, something resigned. "The rite is almost complete," she said, her voice low, a little strained. "The final test is upon us. If we fail, there will be no going back." Quicksilver's heart pounded in his chest. The stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just about her survival anymore. This wasn't just about saving her people or preventing chaos from consuming her world. This was about them, about the fragile, unspoken bond that had formed between them in the midst of all this madness. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice steady, though his mind was still reeling. "I'm not going to let this rite destroy you, Lelzera. We can figure out another way." She shook her head slowly, her face softening with the weight of a truth he wasn't ready to hear. "There is no other way, Quicksilver. The rite is not something you can just walk away from. It demands everything from us. And if we do not complete it, there will be no second chance." He stepped closer, his heart racing. "But I don't know if I can." "You don't have to," she interrupted softly, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "I need you, Quicksilver. I need your presence, your connection. It is the only way the rite will be completed. We must face it together." His mind was spinning. He had always been able to run from danger, outrun every threat that came his way. But this wasn't something he could escape. He couldn't outrun the rite, couldn't speed through it. No, this was something else. This was about choice, about standing firm in the face of an impossible situation. The air around them crackled, the energy growing stronger with every passing second. Quicksilver felt the pulse deep in his bones, a steady hum that resonated with something deep inside him. He knew what she was asking, and he knew what was at stake. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he took hers. The connection was instant, electric, raw, undeniable. It was like an explosion of sensation, a surge of energy that left him breathless. Every fiber of his being seemed to vibrate with the force of it. Lelzera's eyes softened, her lips parting in something between a smile and a sigh. "You are brave, Quicksilver," she whispered. "But do you understand what this means? The right will change us. It will bind us together in ways you cannot fathom." "I understand," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside him. "I'm ready." The moment the words left his mouth, the room seemed to collapse inward, the air thickening with a powerful force. Quicksilver could feel it. The final test, the moment where everything would either fall apart or come together. He gripped her hand tighter, determined not to let go, determined to face whatever came next with her by his side. The light around them flared, bright enough to blind. And then, as quickly as it had come, it dimmed. The energy that had filled the room now pulsed in a steady rhythm, calm but powerful, like the beating of a heart. Quicksilver opened his eyes, blinking against the afterglow. The apartment was silent now, still, as if the world itself had stopped to catch its breath. Lelzera stood before him, her eyes wide, the bioluminescence slowly fading from her skin. "We did it," she whispered, her voice barely audible, filled with awe and exhaustion. Quicksilver didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. Whatever had just happened, whatever the right had demanded of them, it was over for now. They had survived it. And in that moment, Quicksilver realized something. The right had not just bound them together in the way it had intended. It had forged a bond between them that nothing could break. They had faced the impossible, together.